There was once a velveteen rabbit, and in the beginning he was really splendid. He was fat and bunchy as a rabbit should be. His coat was spotted brown and white. He had real thread whiskers and his ears were lined with pink satin. On Christmas morning, when he sat wedged in the top of Boy's stocking with a sprig of holly between his paws, the effect was charming. There were other things in the stocking, nuts and oranges, and a toy engine, and chocolate almonds and a clockwork. But the rabbit was the quite best of all. For at least 2 hours the boy loved him, and then aunts and uncles came to dinner, and there was a great rustling of tissue paper and unwrapping of parcels, and in the excitement of looking at all the new presents, the velveteen rabbit was forgotten. For a long time, he lived in the toy cupboard or on the nursery floor, and no one thought very much about him. He was naturally shy, and being only made of velveteen, some of more expensive toys quite snubbed him. The mechanical toys were very superior and looked down upon everyone else. They were full of modern ideas and pretended they were real. The model boat, who had lived through 2 seasons and lost most of his paint, caught the tone from them and never missed an opportunity of referring to his rigging in technical terms. The rabbit could not claim to be a model of anything, for he didn't know that real rabbits existed. He thought they were all stuffed with sawdust like himself, and he understood that sawdust was quite out of date and should never be mentioned in modern circles. Even Timsley, the jointed wooden line, who was made by the disabled soldiers and should have had broader views, put on airs and pretended he was connected with government. Between them, all the poor little rabbit was made to feel himself very insignificant and commonplace, and the only person who was kind to him was the skin horse. The skin horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath, and most of the hairs in his tail had been pulled out of string beard necklace. He was wise, for he had seen a long succession of mechanical toys arrive to boost and swagger, and by break it their mainspring and pass away. And he knew that there were only toys and would never turn into anything else. For nursery, magic is very strange and wonderful, and only those playful things that are old and wise and experienced like the skin horse understand all about it. What's real? Asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came to tidy the room. Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and a stick out handle? Real isn't how you are made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you when a child loves you for a long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen at all at once, like being wound up? He asked, or bit by bit. It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become, it takes a long time. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been lopped off and your eyes dropped off out of you get loose in your joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all because once you are real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand. I suppose you are real, said the rabbit, and then he wished he had not said it, for he thought the skin horse might be sensitive, but the skin horse only smiled. The boy's uncle made me real, he said. That's what a great many years ago, but once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always. The rabbit sighed. It thought it would be a long time before this magic called real happened to him. He longed to become real, to know what it felt like, and yet the idea of growing shabby and losing his eyes and whiskers was rather sad. He wished that he could become it without these uncomfortable things happening to him. There was a person called Nana who ruled the nursery. Sometimes she took no notice of playing things like laying about, and sometimes for no reason whatever she went swooping about like a great wind and hustled them away in the cupboards. She called this tidying up, and the playthings all hated it, especially the tin ones. The rabbit didn't mind it so, but forever he was thrown, he came down so. One evening, when the boy was going to bed, he couldn't find the china dog that always slept with him. Nana was in a hurry, and it was too late trouble to turn for China's dog at bedtime. So she simply looked about her and seeing that the toy cupboard door stood open and she made a scoop. Here, she said, take your old bunny. Here, do you sleep with you? And she dragged the rabbit out by one ear and put him to the boy's arm. That night and for many nights after that, the velveteen rabbit slept in the boy's bed. At first, he found it rather uncomfortable, for the boy hugged him very tight, and sometimes he rolled over on him, and sometimes he pushed him so far under the pillow that the rabbit could scarcely breathe. And he missed too those long moonlight hours in the nursery when all the house was silent and his talks with the skin horse. But very soon he grew to like it, for the boy used to talk to him and made nice tunnels for him under the bedclothes that he said where the like rabbits lived him. And they had splendid games together in the whispers when the Nana had gone away to her supper and they left the night light burning on the mantelpiece. And when the boy dropped off to sleep, the rabbit would snuggle down close to under his arms china ring, with the boy's hand clasped close round him all night long. And so time went on, and the little rabbit was very happy, so happy that he never noticed how this beautiful velveteen fur was getting shabbier and shabbier, and his tail coming unsewn, and all the paint rubbed off his nose where the boy had kissed him. Spring came and they had long days in the spring days. Wherever the boy went, the rabbit went too. He had rides in the wheelbarrow and picnics on the grass, and lovely fairy huts built for him under the raspberry canes behind the flower border. And once, when the boy was called suddenly away to go out to the tree, the rabbit was left on the lawn until long after dusk, and Nana had came to look for him with candle because the boy couldn't go to sleep unless he was there. He was wet through the dew and the quite earthly from the diving into the burrows the boy had made him for the flower bed, and Nana grumbled as she rubbed him off with the corner of her apron. You must have your old bunny, she said. Fancy all that fuss for a toy. The boy sat up in the bed and stretched out his hand. Give me my bunny, he said. You must not say that. He is not a toy, he is real. When the little rabbit heard that, he was happy, for he knew that what the skin horse had said to him. The nursery magic had happened to him, and he was not a toy longer. He was real, and the boy himself said it. That night was almost too happy to sleep, and so much love stayed in his little sawdust heart that it almost burst. And into his loose button he had no longer a long polish. There came a look of wisdom and beauty, so that even Nana noticed it in the next morning. There was a wonderful summer. Near the house there lived a wood, and the boy liked to go there after tea to play. He took the velveteen rabbit with him before he wandered off to pick flowers or play that free ground among the trees. He always made the rabbit a little nest somewhere among the bracken where he would be quite cozy. One evening, while the rabbit was laying there alone, watching the ants that ran to and fro between his velvet paws in the grass, he saw two strange beings creep out of the tall bracken near him. They were rabbits like himself, but quite furry and brand new. They must have been very well made. So far their seams doesn't show at all. They changed shape in the coil way, and when they moved 1 minute they were long and thin, the next minute fat and bunchy. Their feet padded softly on the ground and they crept quite close to him. They were evidently a new kind of rabbit altogether. They stared at him and the little rabbit stared back, and all the time their noses twisted. Why don't you get up and play with us? One of them asked. I don't feel like it, said the rabbit, and for he didn't want to explain what he had no clockwork. Oh, said the furry rabbit, it's as easy as anything, and he gave a big hoop sideways and stood on his hind legs. I don't believe you can, he said. I can, said the little rabbit. I can jump higher than anything, he meant when the boy threw, but of course he didn't want to say so. Can you hop on your hind leg? Asked the furry rabbit. I don't want to, he said. The another rabbit replied, he hasn't got any hind leg. This has cried the little rabbit, I have got hind legs. Then stretch them out and show me like this, said the white rabbit. I don't like dancing, he said. The strange rabbit stopped dancing and came quite close. He doesn't smell right, he exclaimed. He is not a rabbit at all, he is not real. I am real, said the little rabbit. I am real, the boy said so. Just then their boy ran past and came across the rabbits. Come back and play with me, called the little rabbit. Oh, do come back. I know I am real. Oh dear, he thought. Why didn't they run away like that? For a long time he lay very still, but they never returned, and presently the sun sank lower and the little white moths fluttered out. Weeks passed and the little rabbit grew very old and shabby. Even his brown spots faded his skin, but the boy loved him so much as always, for him the real rabbit was always real. His face grew very flushed and he talked in his sleep. Strange people came and went in the nursery and a light burned all the night, hidden from sunlight under the bedclothes, and he never stirred for he was afraid that it was a long weary time when the boy was ill. Boy was too ill to play, and the little rabbit found it dull with nothing to do all the day long. All sorts of delightful things he planned for the quick recovery of boy. Was able to finally he was able to sit up in bed and look at the picture book. It was a bright sunny morning. They had carried the boy out in the balcony. The boy was going to the seaside. Everything was arranged. They talked about it all. The room was to be disinfected, and all the books and toys that the boy had played with in the bed must be burnt. This suggestion was presented by the doctor. Hurrah, thought the little rabbit. Tomorrow we shall be go to seaside. Then the Nana caught sight of him. How about this old bunny? He asked. The doctor said, why, it's a mess of scarlet fusions. And so the little rabbit was put into a sack with all picture books and a lot of rubbish and carried out to the end of garden behind the old house. That night the boy slept in a different room and he had a new bunny to sleep with him. For tomorrow he was going to the seaside, and then in itself it was a wonderful thing that he could think of nothing else. The sack had been left untied, and so the wiggling a bit, he was able to get his head through the opening and look out. He was shivering a little. Nearby he could see the thickest of raspberry canes growing tall and close like a tropical jungle. He thought of those long sunlit hours in the garden that he spent with the boy. He thought of the skin horse, so wise and gentle, of what he used to was it to be loved and lose one's beauty. And later a tear and a real tear tricked down his little shabby velvet nose and fell to the ground. It has slender green leaves and on which the tear spent. It was so beautiful that the little rabbit forgot to cry, and presently the blossom opened out in the for its rapid fairy. He was quite loveliest fairy in the whole world, and she came close to the little rabbit and gathered him up in her arms and kissed him. Little rabbit, she said, don't you know who I am? The little rabbit looked at her and asked, who are you? I am the nursery magic fairy, she said. I take care of all the playthings that the children have loved. Wasn't I real before? Asked the rabbit. You were real to the boy. It was a light new now, for the moon had risen and the forest was beautiful. I have brought you a new playful fellow, the fairy said. You must be very kind to him and teach him all the needs to know in the rabbit land, for he is going to live with you forever and ever. Run and play, little rabbit, the fairy said. And he might have sat there a long time, too shy to move, but if just then something has not tickled